My friend, have you ever felt like time has slipped through your fingers? Like you've lost years, perhaps to bad decisions, setbacks, or circumstances beyond your control? The good news is this: God is a restorer. He does not just give back what was lost, He multiplies it. He redeems time, heals wounds, and makes all things new. Today I want to share with you 7 signs that God is about to restore your wasted years. If you see these signs in your life, take heart. Restoration is near. One of the first signs that God is preparing to restore you is an overwhelming sense that your current situation is no longer acceptable. This isn't just frustration, it's a holy discontent. Consider the story of the prodigal son, Luke 15:11-32. He had wasted his inheritance on reckless living, but one day he came to himself and said, "I will arise and go to my father." That dissatisfaction led to restoration. If you feel restless, if you are no longer comfortable where you are, God is stirring your spirit. He is preparing you for a comeback. When God is about to restore you, He draws you closer to Him. Suddenly, you feel a longing to pray, to read His Word, to worship. In Joel 2:12-25, before God promised to restore the years the locusts have eaten, He first called His people to return to Him with all their heart. Restoration always begins with intimacy with God. When you seek Him first, He aligns everything else in your life. If your hunger for Him is increasing, He is setting you up for a breakthrough. When God restores, He often brings the right people into your life: mentors, partners, or even strangers who open doors. Think of Joseph. After years of suffering, one conversation with Pharaoh's cupbearer led to his promotion, Genesis 41. If you are suddenly encountering people who inspire, challenge, and uplift you, don't take it lightly. These are divine connections, people assigned to help you step into your next season. Another sign of restoration is when doors start opening unexpectedly. Job lost everything, but when his time of restoration came, God gave him twice as much as before. Job 42:10. Are you receiving job offers you didn't apply for? Opportunities you didn't seek? That's God redeeming lost time. What took others years to achieve, God will accomplish in moments for you. When God restores, He does it quickly. The Bible says, "I will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten," Joel 2:25. He doesn't just restore, He accelerates. Esther was an orphan, but in 1 year, God positioned her as queen, Esther 2:17. God is about to do in months what should have taken decades. If you feel an inner strength rising, a determination like never before, that is God pushing you into divine acceleration. Before restoration happens on the outside, it first happens in the mind. The Israelites were freed from Egypt, but many never entered the Promised Land because they still thought like slaves. If you've noticed a change in how you think, if you are believing bigger, expecting greater, and seeing possibilities where you once saw limitations, God is preparing you for restoration. Finally, before God restores, He fills you with unexplainable peace and joy, even before circumstances change. Isaiah 61:7 declares, "Instead of shame, you will receive a double portion, and instead of disgrace, you will rejoice in your inheritance." If you've been through hardship but suddenly feel an inner joy, a deep assurance that God is in control, get ready. That is a sign that your season of restoration has arrived. Conclusion, beloved, God is faithful. If you see these signs in your life, don't doubt. Your restoration is near. He is the God who restores, redeems, and rewards those who trust in Him. The wasted years are not truly wasted if God is in the picture. He will restore, accelerate, and give you back more than you lost. Stand firm, stay expectant. Your best days are ahead. A major sign that God is about to restore your wasted years is a strong sense of dissatisfaction with where you are. This is not ordinary frustration or impatience, but a deep, undeniable stirring in your spirit. You begin to feel that something is missing, that your life was meant for more than what you are currently experiencing. The story of the prodigal son in Luke 15:11-32 perfectly illustrates this. He had squandered his inheritance on reckless living and ended up in a desperate situation, feeding pigs and barely surviving. But then something powerful happened. The Bible says he came to himself. In that moment, he recognized that he was not where he was supposed to be. That realization led him back to his father's house, where he was fully restored. This same kind of awakening happens when God is preparing to restore someone. A season of dissatisfaction comes before elevation. You may feel like you no longer fit in with certain people or places. Conversations that once excited you now feel empty. The job you used to enjoy may start to feel meaningless. Even your daily routine might seem like a cycle of wasted time. This is not depression or mere frustration. It is God stirring your heart to prepare you for something greater. This kind of holy discontent is often the catalyst for major transformation. In the Bible, Nehemiah experienced it when he heard about the broken walls of Jerusalem. He had a good job in the king's palace, yet he could not ignore the burden in his heart. That dissatisfaction led him to rebuild the city and restore the people. When you feel this kind of discomfort, do not ignore it. It is a sign that God is shifting you. Many people try to silence this feeling by distracting themselves, turning to entertainment, social media, or even unhealthy habits. But instead of escaping, lean into that discomfort and ask God what He's trying to show you. This dissatisfaction can also come after a prolonged season of failure, loss, or stagnation. You may look back and see wasted opportunities, missed moments, or wrong choices. You may feel like time has slipped away and you wonder if restoration is even possible, but God does not allow dissatisfaction without a purpose. He is awakening your spirit because He is about to move in your life. If you are feeling a growing sense that you were meant for more, it is not just a personal desire, it is God calling you into a new season. He is stirring something inside you so that you no longer settle for less than His best. This is a sign that He is about to restore all that was lost. Another unmistakable sign that God is about to restore your wasted years is a deep hunger for His presence. When restoration is near, God draws you back to Himself in a way that is undeniable. In Joel 2:12, 2025, God first calls His people to return to Him before promising to restore the years the locusts have eaten. Restoration always begins with relationship. Before God brings external blessings, He restores the heart. If you have recently felt a stronger desire to pray, worship, or read His Word, it is a sign that something is shifting. You may find yourself waking up with a hunger to seek Him. Worship songs might touch you in ways they never did before. Scriptures that seemed ordinary now feel alive. This renewed passion is not random. It is preparation. Many people experience spiritual dryness after going through disappointment, failure, or loss. Maybe you once walked closely with God, but after experiencing setbacks, you drifted. Perhaps the pain of wasted years made you feel distant from Him. But when God is about to restore you, He begins by reigniting your desire for His presence. David understood this deeply. After failing God and wasting time in sin, he cried out in Psalm 51, 10-12, "Create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a steadfast spirit within me. Restore to me the joy of your salvation." David knew that before external restoration, his heart had to be restored first. A renewed hunger for God also brings clarity. When you seek Him, He begins to reveal His plans for your life. You may have spent years confused or uncertain about your purpose, but as you draw near to Him, He directs your steps. The closer you get to God, the clearer you see His hand at work in your life. God also uses this hunger to separate you from distractions. When He is about to restore you, certain relationships, habits, or environments may suddenly lose their appeal. You may find yourself withdrawing from things that once occupied your time, but no longer feed your spirit. This is not isolation, it is preparation. Moses experienced this before stepping into his calling. He spent years tending sheep in the wilderness, seemingly forgotten. But then he encountered the burning bush, a moment of divine encounter that changed everything. That encounter led him into his purpose, and God used him to deliver an entire nation. If you find yourself longing for more of God, do not ignore it. This hunger is a sign that He is preparing you for something new. When you prioritize His presence, He aligns everything else in your life. A restored relationship with God leads to restored purpose. relationships, and time. If you are feeling this fresh desire for Him, get ready. Restoration is near. A major sign that God is about to restore your wasted years is the sudden appearance of key people in your life. Mentors, partners, or even strangers who create new opportunities for growth and elevation. These divine connections are not ordinary friendships or professional relationships. They are strategic alignments that propel you forward. The Bible is filled with examples of people whose restoration came through a connection with the right person. Joseph was in prison for years, seemingly forgotten, but one conversation with Pharaoh's cupbearer led to a divine appointment with Pharaoh himself. Genesis 41. In a single day, Joseph went from prisoner to prime minister. That transition did not happen by chance. It was orchestrated by God through a key relationship. When God is about to restore someone, He often places them in rooms they do not expect to enter. You may find yourself meeting people who speak into your destiny, encourage your dreams, or open doors that once seemed shut. These are not coincidences. God uses people as vessels to accelerate your restoration. This can also manifest through sudden opportunities that were not even on your radar. Maybe you receive a job offer you did not apply for, a business partnership you never considered, or an invitation to a place where your gifts are recognized. These moments are signals that God is shifting you into a season of restoration. Divine connections do not always come in the form of people who look powerful or influential. Sometimes they appear as small, seemingly insignificant relationships that later become life-changing. Ruth experienced this when she followed Naomi. She had lost everything. Her husband, her home, and her future seemed uncertain. But by staying connected to Naomi, she found herself in the field of Boaz, a man who would later restore her life completely. Ruth 2. What seemed like an ordinary decision led to extraordinary restoration. God also removes certain relationships when He's preparing you for restoration. Sometimes before the right people enter, the wrong ones must leave. If you have noticed shifts in your social circle, it may be a sign that God is making room for new alignment. A divine connection is often recognized by its fruit. These relationships do not drain you, they push you toward purpose. They come with wisdom, resources, and opportunities that accelerate your progress. If you find yourself suddenly surrounded by people who inspire, challenge, and uplift you, do not ignore it. God is orchestrating relationships that will lead you into restoration. When God is about to restore your wasted years, doors will begin to open that no human effort could have unlocked. Favor becomes evident in areas where you previously struggled. What once took years of effort suddenly happens with ease. The story of Job is a perfect example of divine restoration. After experiencing devastating losses, he remained faithful to God. In Job 42:10, it says, "The Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as before." This restoration did not come through Job's striving. It was a supernatural act of God's favor. One sign of divine favor is when people extend help, resources, or opportunities without expecting anything in return. You may receive financial support, job promotions, or breakthroughs in areas where doors had been closed for years. These moments are not luck. They are evidence that God is repaying what was lost. Esther experienced this kind of favor when she was chosen to be queen. Esther 2:17. She was an orphan, a foreigner with no royal background, yet she found favor with the king. That favor positioned her to save an entire nation. When God is restoring you, favor will place you in positions beyond your qualifications. One of the most profound aspects of divine restoration is how God redeems lost time. You may feel like you are behind in life, that others have advanced while you have been stagnant. But when favor enters, what took others years to achieve happens in a fraction of the time. When Nehemiah set out to rebuild the walls of Jerusalem, the project was completed in just 52 days. Nehemiah 6:15. This was a task that should have taken years, but divine favor accelerated the process. God is able to restore time that was lost due to bad decisions, delays, or opposition. Favor also brings provision. Many people feel stuck because they lack the resources to move forward. But when restoration is near, provision comes unexpectedly. The Israelites had spent years in slavery, but when their time of restoration came, God caused their oppressors to hand over wealth to them. Exodus 12:35-36. If you have noticed an increase in unexpected blessings, opportunities, and breakthroughs, pay attention. Favor is an indicator that restoration is unfolding. What once seemed impossible is becoming possible, and the wasted years are being redeemed. When God is about to restore wasted years, one of the clearest signs is rapid growth and strength that defies natural limitations. This growth is not ordinary, it is supernatural. Acceleration. What once took years to develop suddenly happens in a fraction of the time. Skills sharpen quickly, opportunities multiply, and progress becomes visible in areas where stagnation once ruled. Joseph's life is a perfect example of this. He spent years in prison, forgotten and overlooked. But when his time of restoration came, he was elevated overnight. In Genesis 41:14, Pharaoh called him from the prison, and by the end of that same day, he was made second in command over all of Egypt. He went from being an unknown prisoner to a ruler in a single day. That is divine acceleration. This kind of restoration is not limited to biblical times. There are countless testimonies of people who experience years of struggle only to rise to a place of success and impact in record time. A business that was failing suddenly thrives. A career that seemed stuck suddenly flourishes. A dream that had been on hold for years suddenly takes off. When God steps in, he makes up for lost time. There is also an increase in wisdom and understanding when acceleration begins. Concepts that were once confusing become clear. Strategies for success start coming effortlessly. Where there was once hesitation, there is now confidence. This is because God is not just restoring what was lost. He is giving the ability to handle the next level with strength. Another sign of acceleration is when you start receiving recognition or opportunities you did not pursue. Others may have worked for years to reach a certain place, but God positions you there in a short time. This does not mean there will be no effort on your part, but the level of results compared to the input will be supernatural. This process also comes with an inner strength that cannot be explained. There is a new level of endurance, resilience, and focus. Where there was once exhaustion and discouragement, there is now energy and determination. Even in areas where failure was repeated, there is a fresh drive to try again. David experienced this after years of running from Saul. He had been anointed as king long before he stepped into his destiny. But once his season of restoration came, his kingship was fully established without resistance. The strength to endure was a sign that restoration was near. This strength also allows people to handle blessings that would have been overwhelming in the past. Some delays happen because a person is not yet ready for what God wants to give them. But when the season of restoration arrives, there is an internal capacity to manage the blessing properly. What would have once seemed too much responsibility now feels like a natural step forward. God's restoration is never just about recovering lost time. It is about making up for what was lost with an increase. When growth happens at an unnatural speed and strength rises from within, it is a clear sign that restoration is in motion. Before restoration happens externally, it first takes place in the mind. God does not simply restore circumstances, he transforms perspectives. A major sign that restoration is near is when a person's way of thinking begins to change. The Israelites were physically freed from Egypt, but many of them never entered the promised land because their minds were still in captivity. Even though they had left slavery, they saw themselves as grasshoppers in the face of giants. Numbers 13:33. Restoration was available, but their mindset prevented them from receiving it. When God is about to restore wasted years, he begins by changing thought patterns. Negative self-perceptions are replaced with confidence. Fear that once held a person back is replaced with boldness. The belief that success is for others but not for oneself is removed. This shift in mindset often comes with an increased ability to see possibilities instead of limitations. Instead of focusing on what was lost, the focus shifts to what can be gained. Problems that once seemed impossible to overcome now look like opportunities for growth. One of the strongest indicators of this transformation is a shift from complaining to gratitude. Instead of dwelling on how much time has been wasted, there is a deep awareness of how much can still be accomplished. This is a mindset of restoration, seeing the future as greater than the past. Another key change is the ability to take action where there was once hesitation. Many people remain stuck because their thoughts convince them that they are not ready, not qualified, or not deserving. But when restoration is near, there is a sudden boldness to step out in faith. Gideon experienced this in Judges 6. He saw himself as weak and insignificant, hiding from his enemies. But when God was ready to restore his destiny, his thinking changed. He began to see himself as the warrior God had called him to be. That mental shift led to victory. This change also manifests in the way people handle setbacks. In the past, a failure might have caused them to quit, but now they see it as part of the journey. Instead of allowing obstacles to create fear, they develop the mindset that setbacks are temporary and restoration is inevitable. God's restoration is never just about giving back what was lost. It is about elevating a person to a higher level than before. That elevation starts in the mind. When thinking shifts from fear to faith, from doubt to confidence, and from regret to expectancy, restoration is already in motion. When God is about to restore wasted years, one of the clearest signs is an unshakable sense of joy and peace, even before circumstances change. This kind of peace is not based on external conditions, but comes from within. A deep assurance that God is at work, aligning everything for restoration. Many people assume that joy and peace come after restoration, but in God's process, they often come before it. In Isaiah 61:7, God declares, "Instead of shame, you will receive a double portion, and instead of disgrace, you will rejoice in your inheritance." The joy is mentioned before the restoration happens because joy is a sign that restoration is already unfolding. This is not ordinary happiness that depends on good news or favorable outcomes. It is the kind of peace that surpasses understanding, Philippians 4:7. Even if nothing has changed outwardly, there is an internal knowing that breakthrough is near. People experiencing this often find themselves waking up with excitement for no apparent reason. They may still be in the same financial, emotional, or personal situation, but their heart feels lighter. One of the biggest indicators of this restoration-driven joy is the ability to let go of past disappointment. Many people hold on to frustration from wasted time, bad decisions, or missed opportunities. But when God is restoring, He removes the weight of regret. Where there was once discouragement, there's now expectancy. David understood this deeply. After facing loss and betrayal, he wrote in Psalm 35, "Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning." His situation had not yet changed, but his heart was already shifting toward joy because he knew God was faithful. Peace also manifests as a newfound ability to trust God fully. Instead of worrying about how restoration will happen, there is a surrender that says, "I may not see the full picture, but I know God is in control." This peace removes the need to force things to happen, replacing anxiety with patience and expectation. Another way this joy appears is through renewed energy and motivation. Someone who was once exhausted from life's struggles suddenly finds themselves eager to move forward. They may feel inspired to start projects, reconnect with old dreams, or invest in relationships they had given up on. This is because God's restoration does not only return what was lost, it reignites passion and purpose. When restoration is near, there's also a new appreciation for life. Small moments that were once overlooked now bring deep gratitude. Sunrises feel meaningful, conversations feel richer, and worship feels more powerful. This is not random. It is evidence that God is working internally before He moves externally. Many people experience this shift after a long season of hardship. The storm may not have fully passed, but they suddenly find themselves smiling more, worrying less, and believing again. This is God preparing the heart for the restoration that is about to take place. One of the most powerful ways God restores wasted years is by giving back time through increased productivity and efficiency. What once took years to accomplish can now happen in months. The opportunities, resources, and energy that seemed lost are suddenly restored in a way that accelerates progress. In Joel 2:25, God promises, "I will restore to you the years that the locust has eaten." This verse does not just mean replacing what was lost. It means making up for lost time. God has the ability to give people results that should have taken years in a much shorter period. A clear example of this is found in Nehemiah 6:15, where the walls of Jerusalem, which had been broken for decades, were rebuilt in just 52 days. This was a task that should have taken years based on human effort, but with divine restoration, it was completed in record time. One way this manifests is through sudden clarity and direction. Many people waste years confused about their purpose, but when God restores, He removes the fog. Instead of wandering aimlessly, they now have a clear vision and know exactly what to do next. Ideas flow easily, decisions are made faster, and delays that once blocked progress disappear. Another sign of this restoration is an increase in opportunities that match a person's destiny. Someone who once struggled to find open doors now finds multiple doors opening at the same time. This is not because they suddenly became more talented or connected. It is because God is restoring their time. Restoration of lost time also happens through supernatural strength and efficiency. People who were once slow to take action now find themselves completing tasks quickly. Things that once seemed overwhelming become manageable. Whether it is finishing a degree, launching a business, or repairing relationships, the pace of progress is significantly faster than before. This kind of productivity often comes with divine connections. Someone who struggled for years may suddenly meet a mentor or partner who accelerates their growth. This is because God does not restore in isolation. He brings the right people at the right time to ensure progress happens without unnecessary delay. Financial restoration is another major part of this process. Many people feel they have lost years due to financial struggles, but when God restores, He brings opportunities that generate results far greater than what was lost. This could be a new job, a business idea, or even unexpected financial blessings. The key sign is that progress happens much faster than expected. Even in personal growth, the restoration of time is evident. Someone who struggled with emotional pain for years may suddenly find themselves healed and ready to move forward. What once seemed like a slow journey of recovery is accelerated by God's hand. When God restores lost time, He does not just return what was taken, He adds increase. The years that seemed wasted become a foundation for greater impact. Those who fell behind suddenly find themselves ahead. What should have taken decades happens in a short span. This is the power of divine restoration. God does not simply rewind the clock. He makes the next season so fruitful that the past losses become insignificant. When unusual productivity and acceleration become evident, it is a sign that wasted years are being restored. One of the clearest signs that God is restoring wasted years is the healing and reconciliation of broken relationships. Time that was lost due to misunderstandings, betrayals, or distance is often repaid through unexpected reunions and stronger bonds. When restoration is at work, relationships that seemed beyond repair are mended, and people who had drifted apart find themselves reconnecting. God is a restorer of hearts, and He often starts with the relationships that matter most. A powerful example of this is seen in the story of Joseph and his brothers. Joseph was sold into slavery by his own family, left for dead, and separated from them for years. But when the time of restoration came, God orchestrated events to bring them back together. Joseph, who had every reason to remain bitter, chose forgiveness. In Genesis 50:20, he tells his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Not only was their relationship restored, but Joseph's position of power allowed him to bless the very people who had wronged him. Many people lose precious years due to family breakdowns, friendships that turned sour, or marriages that fell apart. When God restores, He does not just bring people back together, He creates stronger foundations for these relationships. The lessons learned during separation lead to deeper understanding, and love is renewed with a fresh perspective. Reconciliation is often unexpected. A person who had not spoken to a relative for years may suddenly receive a phone call. A friendship that ended on bad terms may be revived through a simple message. These moments are not coincidences. They are divine setups. God softens hearts, removes pride, and creates circumstances that lead to healing. Restoration of relationships does not always mean things return to exactly how they were before. Sometimes God transforms a broken relationship into something new and even better. This is especially true for marriages that have faced hardship. Many couples who thought their relationship was beyond saving have seen God step in and bring back love, trust, and unity in ways they never expected. Forgiveness plays a major role in this process. Many people remain stuck in bitterness, believing that too much time has passed to fix things. But when God is working, He gives the strength to forgive and the wisdom to rebuild. True restoration does not ignore the past, but it removes its power to control the future. Another sign of relationship restoration is when new, healthy relationships begin to form. Sometimes God does not bring back the people who left, but He introduces new individuals who bring love, encouragement, and support. Whether it is an old relationship being renewed or a new one being established, the key sign is a sense of peace and connection that was missing before. This process also includes reconciliation with God. Many people spend years distant from Him due to disappointment, sin, or personal struggles. But when restoration is near, there is a renewed hunger for His presence. Prayer becomes natural again, worship feels meaningful, and the desire to draw close to God is reignited. Restoration is about more than just fixing what was broken. It is about making it stronger than before. When relationships begin to heal, when old wounds no longer carry pain, and when love replaces resentment, it is a sign that wasted years are being restored. A significant sign of divine restoration is when prayers that seemed unanswered for years suddenly come to pass. Many people carry promises from God, dreams, prophecies, and desires that have been in their hearts for a long time. When restoration begins, these long-awaited promises start manifesting in ways that only God could orchestrate. Abraham and Sarah waited 25 years for the fulfillment of God's promise that they would have a son. By human standards, it seemed impossible. Sarah even laughed when she heard the prophecy again in her old age, Genesis 18:12. But when the time of restoration came, God fulfilled His word, proving that no promise from Him ever fails. Many people have dreams that were delayed by circumstances, poor decisions, or opposition. They may have believed that it was too late or that they had missed their chance. But when God restores, He does not operate on human timelines. He brings things to pass at the perfect moment, often in ways that exceed expectations. A sign that restoration is happening is when long-held desires start resurfacing. A person who once gave up on writing a book, starting a business, or pursuing a calling suddenly feels inspired again. This is not a coincidence. It is God reviving dreams that seem buried. Another indication is when past disappointments no longer create doubt. Many people stop believing in their promises because they have faced too many delays. But when restoration is at work, there is a renewed faith. The same person who once said, "It's too late for me," now says, "I believe it can still happen." God often brings confirmation during this time. A person may hear a sermon, receive a prophetic word, or stumble upon a scripture that directly speaks to their situation. These confirmations serve as reminders that God has not forgotten the promise. The story of Elizabeth and Zechariah is another example of delayed promises being fulfilled. They had prayed for a child for years, but nothing happened. When they had given up hope, God sent an angel to tell them that their son John the Baptist was on the way. Luke 1:13. The timing was divine, as John's birth was part of a greater plan connected to Jesus' ministry. Restoration often comes with unexpected timing. A person who waited years for a breakthrough in their career may suddenly receive an opportunity they never saw coming. Someone who longed for a family may find love when they least expected it. These moments remind us that God's delays are not denials. He was simply preparing the perfect time. Another sign is when past efforts that once seemed wasted start bearing fruit. Seeds that were planted long ago, whether in ministry, business, or personal growth, suddenly begin to produce results. Someone who served faithfully for years without seeing progress may now experience rapid success. This process requires trust. Many people get discouraged when they do not see immediate results. But when God restores, the waiting season turns into a reaping season. What was lost is returned in abundance, and what was delayed arrives at just the right time. Restoration does not just return what was lost. It brings back dreams, opportunities, and blessings that seem gone forever. When doors that were once closed begin to open, when forgotten prayers are answered, and when long-awaited promises are fulfilled, it is a clear sign that wasted years are being restored.